Good afternoon. Try that again. Good afternoon. I love you guys. You know how much I love you guys? I wore a tie today. I haven't physically put a tie in 4 years. I barely remembered how to do this. I dressed up like Mr. Rogers for you guys today. This is how much I love you. Because you know the last day, it's all hugs, right? Like it's like 10% content, 90% hugs on the last day of any conference. So I came prepared, right? Can you guys keep the slides? So I want to ask you guys a question. So the topic for today, my title, is called Abundant Selling. And I want to ask you a question, and I want you to write down an answer. What is abundance? What does that word mean to you? Just a couple seconds, not too long. What does the word abundance mean to you? If you have to give it a definition, what would you say? I'm actually kind of curious for any of you guys who already wrote your answers down. What was your answer? Plenty for all. Great answer. What else? Who else has got an answer? More than needed. Okay, excellent. Without lack. Interesting, I like that. What else? Having more than you need. A larger fulfilling amount. This is great. These are all good answers. So I'm going to give you guys two definitions of the word abundance. So the first one is Webster's dictionary, which says abundance is a very large quantity of something. And to simplify that, abundance is a lot. A lot. That's what abundance is to Webster's dictionary. So a different definition I want to invite you to consider for my presentation, and you might even consider it for your life, is that abundance is the belief that there is more than enough. The belief that there is more than enough of everything and anything you need, more than enough customers, more than enough shows, more than enough everything is right out there. And I want to give you guys a story of my first experience of abundance. And this is when I was 15 years old. Back when I lived in San Diego, California. And I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and my parents sent all 5 kids through private Catholic education from kindergarten until we graduated high school. Now, they didn't do that because they had a lot of money. They did that because they highly valued education. And I was the last one going through school, and I remember being in high school, and I was always like the poorest kid in the richest school. So it's kind of always this really interesting conundrum to be in every single day. And when I was 15 years old, I went out for the cross-country team, and I made varsity my first year out. And I remember being in my coach's office at the end of the season with all the new varsity runners, and we were all talking, and everyone was talking about their Letterman jacket, right? Any guys got a Letterman jacket back home, right? The pride. And they were talking about where they were going to put their patches and like where they were going to locate things, and there was so much pride in having a Letterman jacket. And the coach was going through filling out order forms for everyone who was ordering a jacket, and then he gets to me and he says, "Hey, John, what size jacket do you want me to order you?" And I said, "Don't worry about me, coach. I don't need a jacket." And then he says, "No, of course you do. Like, what's your size? I'm going to order you a jacket." And so I walked up to him because I didn't want everyone else to hear it, but I just told him, I said, "Coach, my family can't afford a jacket. Like, I would love to get one, but we just can't afford it." And without hesitation, he looked at me and said, "Don't worry about it. I'm ordering you a jacket. Whenever you got the money, feel free to pay me back. Every varsity runner on this team has a jacket. What size do you wear?" And it was a moment that many of us have experienced at different times of our life, which is that moment when somebody believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And it was a time for me as a 15-year-old who had no money that he bought this jacket for me, and I was like, well, why would you do this? Like, I'd never experienced such generosity. And I remember getting that jacket and wearing that for the next 3 years as I was a high school student, and how much pride I wore that jacket with. And when I think back to who that coach was, his name was Jerry Downey, Coach Jerry Downey. And he understood something about abundance, and he understood something that very few people will ever learn in their life. And that's this concept. The moment you value energy over money and vision over certainty, your life will change. The moment you value energy over money and vision over certainty, your life will change. Think about it. Is there a lot of certainty in lending $250 to a 15-year-old high school student? Think about yourself as a 15-year-old. Were you very reliable to be given $250 of anything? But he understood something. He understood the value of a vision more than that money was worth. An interesting fact about our cross-country team is that we were the CIF conference champions every single year that I was in high school, going to St. Augustine's High School. In fact, we made it to the state championships every single year that I went to that high school. And on top of that, our senior year, our school was recognized, our cross-country team was recognized as having the second highest GPA on average per runner on the team in the entire state of California. The average GPA was 4.12. Most of the kids from my cross-country team went off to Harvard, Notre Dame, Boston College, excellent schools. Why did that happen? Were we just really talented? Were we just great kids? Were we just excellent runners? We were surrounded, we were led by somebody who valued this. He valued the vision of his team. He knew what he was building, and he cared about that more than $250. That's what abundance is. And what I love about this concept, like think about your lives. Think about moments that are so powerful for you that you remember that are really meaningful. And a lot of times they're a result of being abundant with somebody and being generous and really giving, or being on the receiving end of abundance. When someone was generous with you and you didn't necessarily deserve it. That's what it means to be abundant. And what's so interesting about this concept is, if you think about it, is that we live in a container of abundance. Our society lives inside the container of more than enough. Just imagine the beginning of any society. How does it look? People with farms, right? And imagine a farmer, and what he does is he grows corn, and he grows all this corn, enough for his family to eat. And then what does he have? He has a surplus. He has an abundance of corn that he can't do anything with. Does he just leave it sitting there on the vine, ready to die? No, he takes that corn and he goes over to his neighbor, the guy who sells goats or grows goats, or I don't know what you do with goats, but he goes over to Goat Man, and he's like, "Hey, Goat Man, I got this abundance of corn. Do you have an abundance of goats? Hey, let's trade our abundance with each other. Let's give each other what we have more than enough of." And that's how societies, that's how economies are created. Think about your business. When you're at a booth and a customer walks up to you and they start asking questions about knives and they want to placing an order, do they buy Cutco with money that they have or money that they don't have? With money that they have. If they really didn't have any money and no credit card, no access to funds, would they buy any Cutco? So your job, your livelihood, everything you do rests on abundance. It's such an interesting concept that I never really thought about until the last several years of my Cutco career. And really, the more that I understood it, the more I learned to embody this concept of abundance. And being abundant, selling became abundant. It became easier with less time. And why is this topic so important, especially at this conference? Because why did most of you guys come here? It's funny, if I have some people that I mentor in this room, and I said, before you come to the conference, what are your outcomes? What are you here to learn? What are you here to gain? The most common thing I heard was, I want to learn how to sell more cookware. I want to learn how to sell more flatware. I want to learn how to do better service events. I want to learn and there's all these tactical skills and things like that, and that's great. That's why, most of us come to these events, to get those skills and knowledge. But to have those skills and knowledge without this belief is irrelevant. Consider that more skills gives you marginal growth. Just having more tools and more scripts and things like that. That's why I love working with Brandon Brown. Brandon came up here and gave a great talk on opening day, and he said it's not about saying the right script and the right word at the right time. It's being present enough to hear everything a customer is saying, to really know how to serve them at the highest level in that moment. That's what we should be chasing, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So if I were to ask you a question on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like not at all, and 10 being like at the highest level, I am abundant, I am generous all the time as much as I can be, what would you rate yourself? I'm actually curious, like write a number down. I'm not gonna ask you to tell it out loud. Write a number down for yourself. How abundant are you on a daily basis? And the more you study and learn about abundance, you have to understand a different concept. It's because if abundance is more than enough, what's on the other side of abundance? Scarcity. What is scarcity? It's not enough. We've all felt this. We've all been at the booth. We've all been there working a long day with no sales, and it's not your turn, and somebody walks up to your neighbor, and it's like a slam dunk homemaker +8. Are you feeling abundant in that moment? I would love to say I do. I don't always feel that way. Moment by moment, we're given opportunities to choose abundance or choose scarcity. But just being aware of that just helps you understand that there's a choice. And in the middle, there's enough, there's neutral, there's being kind of in the middle. And when you think about your life and your business, and this is actually a great opportunity to write some ideas down for how your day goes and affecting your energy. And I want you to think about abundance as energy, like high levels of abundance. Think of it as like peak performance energy. And when you look at your day and when you have like crushed it and you have been just on fire, how many of you guys had those days where just everybody buys? You show up to the booth and like everybody, it's like they got an email that said, hey, go find Josh Mueller at the booth and everybody buy and bring your friends and everybody buy from him too, right? Sometimes when you're working with Josh, it feels like that. It's like, Jesus Christ, like what the hell? Like, did he did actually, he sent an email. Probably Amy sent the email, let's be real. But we have those moments where it just seems like we can't be stopped, like everything is working right. So I want you to, this is a great thing I learned from Hal Elrod, which is that every success was preceded by a process. Every success was preceded by a process. So what's that process for you? When you think about when you're performing at your peak levels and you're in a real state of abundance at the booth, what is happening? What is going on for you? I want you to write down some answers for yourself. Really think about it. What did you eat that day? How much sleep did you get? What conversations did you have? What was going on? What was occurring on that day that helped you achieve peak performance? And I'm actually gonna need some mic runners here because I wanna get some feedback from some of you guys in here in the room about what have you learned for yourself and your business about peak performance and having the highest level energy state. So who's got something they'd like to share? What's your process? What's your system? All right, we've got a few. All right, so in the front right here.
Just get a good night's rest.
Getting a good night's rest. Hey, this is a great point. So get a good night's rest. What's a good amount of sleep to get, by the way? Whatever works for you. That's the answer. How many people in here really like to be at like high performance? You got to like at least 8 hours. Raise your hand. How many of you guys can do it and like you're fine, you're totally solid after 7 hours? Who thinks they're like completely fine, totally able to crush it on 6 hours of sleep? Anyone at 5 hours of sleep? All right, I might challenge you a little bit. You might need a little more sleep on 5. But you notice how it's different for everybody. The right answer is what's right for you. Excellent, thank you so much for that. What else? Who else?
So for me, it was basically just having a plan. When I didn't have a plan, when I was just trying to do everything at once, it didn't really work out super well. But when I knew exactly what I was supposed to do at the exact time, I could focus.
Interesting, so when you had a schedule set and you knew what was gonna happen throughout the day and you prepared for the day, that's what helped you be really abundant and present in the moment? Interesting, I love it. What else? Roger.
Having basically like my clothes set up for tomorrow, the next day already the night before, so I just wake up and put them on, don't have to think about it. And also having like a goals of how many orders and what I want to sell the day previous, and then write it down 3 times before I go to bed.
Cool, so you think through your goal of what you want to sell the next day, but what I love, this is a really interesting little nugget, right? Have you ever noticed Mark Zuckerberg, when you see him, like what does he generally wear? Same thing, right? It's like collared shirt or whatever he wears, and like just the same kind of pants. He wears the same thing every single day because he understands that thoughts are energy. The more you have to think about something, the more energy it sucks and pulls away from you, right? Excellent. What else? In the back, Josh Muller, I want to hear from this guy. He might know something about energy.
For me, it's been about like making sure I'm following a morning routine, setting clear intentions for the day, and then celebrating the success that's happening around me versus like intentionally celebrating other people's success to raise my level of success instead of like wishing that I had someone else's success or that I hadn't missed out on someone else's success.
Excellent. You mind sharing with everyone what your morning routine is?
Yeah, it's just wake up.
What time do you wake up?
Yeah, listen to a podcast, green smoothie, slam 20 ounces of water minimum, fill a gallon of water to take in later throughout the day, pack a lunch, and just get into gratitude immediately, and then do 15 minutes of strategic like intention setting or planning for the day.
Wait, hang on a second. So Josh, you're telling me you don't wake up at 8 a.m. and then leave the house by 8:30 a.m. to go to the booth that you need to be at and set up by 9 a.m. to be able to sell $5,000 that day because your goal is $5,000 for the day. You're telling me that's not your morning routine?
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. One more.
My morning routine is practicing my scripts in the car on the way to my show, and then playing my pump song right before I go and set up my booth.
The pump song. What's your pump song?
It's Champion by Carrie Underwood.
There you go. I love it. I love it. All right, excellent. So I'm going to fly through some of my recommendations of abundance. All right, so I'm going to give you this is the energy of abundance. So here are some things that affect your energy every single day to help you be in an abundant state when you're with a customer. Number one is food. Here's a really simple question I'm going to start off with. Does your energy affect your performance with a customer? Oh wait, so you're telling me that when you're in a better, positive, energetic state, you actually sell more with a customer? Really? Wow, that's such an interesting thing. Okay, so now does your food affect your energy? The food you eat throughout the day, does that affect how you feel throughout the day? Wow, what an interesting thing. So let me ask you a question. What does your diet look like throughout the day when you're at the booth? And that's going to be whatever, it's going to be dependent on what some of you guys do, and I work with some of you guys. Some of you guys have seen me at the booth. I'm a nut. I am a weirdo. I eat like powders and like bars and like nuts and weird stuff like that. It's not code, Deanna, all right? There's like just anything that's going to keep me in the right state, that's going to give me the right energy. The fact is, here's a great test. I learned this from a good friend, and he said, if you want to understand how your body responds to food, every time, the next meal you eat, set an alarm for 15 minutes and have the alarm say, how do you feel? And when the alarm goes off, ask yourself that question. How do I feel right now? After you eat that really awesome, one-of-a-kind grilled cheese bacon sandwich that they have at the Texas State Fair, but you're there you gotta have it, right? Because it's the thing, it's special for the event, that's fine. But if that's going to affect your energy, that moment, right? That moment that high quality prospect comes up and talks to you at the booth, but you're just a little sluggish, you're not at 100%, and they give you that little objection that normally you would slam dunk, but because you're a little fatigued, you don't close the sale. How many of you guys have been there, by the way, that you just know that fatigue has affected your ability to close the sale at the booth? Then why do you not put your energy at a level 10 importance in your life for you to hit your goal this year? Seriously, guys, this is so significant. This is important. All right, next is water. How much water are you drinking throughout the day? Are you drinking water or are you drinking soda all right, apparently Curtis can live on iced tea. I don't know how he does that, but he's just going to be a wizard. We're going to let him be a wizard in the corner, all right? Water. How much water are you drinking? Next is sleep. Are you getting enough sleep throughout the day? Is that going to affect your energy? The next one is presence. This is a really interesting one. How many of you guys have been at an experience where you wrote up an order and it was just like at the end of the day and it was like a big order and you just completely were just so drained that you just like forgot to fill it out correctly. You sent it to your assistant. They entered it exactly as you wrote, and then they sent the customer the wrong stuff, and then you had to pay to get the customer the right stuff. How many of you guys have done that? What is that a result of? Is that a result of being totally focused and present in the moment when you send everything to your assistant? Or is it like fatigue, I'm tired, I'm just wanting to get done with this? Presence has a price. When we're not present in the moment, we make mistakes. We forget how much is in our bank account. We overdraw. We overdraw on our life when we're not paying attention to what's in our schedule ahead of us, and we're just like last minute, oh my gosh, I got to change everything, right? It throws us out of being present in the moment, which is going to affect your ability to be present with the highest quality prospects at the booth. Next is conversations. This is a really interesting one. Do conversations affect your energy? They do, don't they? How many of you, if you were considering what drains your energy, would say that a lot of that comes from conversations that you have? I was talking to someone last year that I mentor, and they were going to a booth, and they were really not excited because of the person they were working with, because that person is historically pretty negative. And they were just like, oh, when I work with this person, they're always going to bring up this problem and that problem and that problem and that. And then they were just basically preparing for their demise at the booth that weekend. And I was like, okay, so are you telling me, is it impossible for you to have a successful sales weekend at this show? No, it's not impossible. Okay, well, then let's look at this. So what is in the way of it being possible? Well, what's in the way is I'm just gonna have to deal with all these negative conversations. Is it possible to convert someone who's negative into a positive conversation? How do you do that? The types of questions that you ask. This is a really interesting thing below the surface of John Israel that some of you guys will start to realize if you've ever worked with me. If when I work with people, and this isn't like if they're negative, but this is if I don't know them or depending on the energy of the booth, one of the questions I ask is I say, hey, tell me about your biggest order you've ever had at the booth. What happened? What type of customer was it? What was on the order form? And we have this conversation and dialogue about our biggest sales, about our biggest orders. Why are we doing that? What are we doing to the energy of the booth? How are they going to start performing if they're starting to think that way? And if they're performing at a high level, how am I going to start performing at a higher level? Your conversations will affect and impact how you perform. This is also great to know for personal relationships. I actually had to have a really interesting, challenging conversation with my wife one time. How many guys are married or have a significant other? How many guys know that this person knows exactly how to ruin your day? Right. Not that they mean to, we hope. So we had this thing going on. I went to go work a wine festival, and my wife I was about to leave, and then she says, oh, hey, before you go, I'm really curious about this. And it was really a tough, emotional conversation of something that we needed to handle and take care of. But I was about to leave for the booth. And so I stayed and I had this conversation, and I knew we weren't going to get to a resolution. And she wasn't happy. And then I left pissed. And then I'm going to the booth. And then I'm working one of my best events I typically do in the summer. And it was the first time I ever went down at that show. And I came home to my wife, and we resolved what was going on. And I said, hey, I need to tell you something. This is very important. I love you, and you know how important it is for me to perform at a high level when I leave to the booth. Please don't bring up conversations like that before I leave, because it has an impact on how I perform and ultimately has an impact on our family. And I know you didn't want that, and that's not what I want. So if we have a really important emotional conversation that we need to have, can you wait till I come home? You know what she said? Sure. And you know what? She doesn't do that before I leave for the booth anymore. You know what that's called? That's called being cause in the matter versus being at effect in the matter. Being at effect in the matter is like, oh, they're going to say this, and this is just how I'm going to have to feel or what I'm going to have to go through. Being cause in the matter is being like, I'm going to make this happen the way that I want it to happen because it's important for me to hit my goals this year. Conversations you have with people have an effect on your energy, so be responsible for those. Relationships. Are relationships important to affecting our energy at the booth? 100%. Can relationships drain us? Can relationships also be like some of our biggest motivators? Absolutely. Hey, where's Andrew Duber, by the way? AJ? Can someone bring a mic over to AJ? Actually, I have a question. He totally didn't know I was putting him on the spot here. So can someone bring AJ a mic? So AJ is a guy that I'm mentoring right now. We had a really great conversation while we were here at the event. So AJ, what's your goal for 2019? What's your plan to sell?
300,000.
300,000. Okay, great. So now we were talking and we were going over like, what do you want? What do you care about? Like, what do you want to get out of this event? And then I asked you a question. I said, what do you care about? What's something that's really important to you? Do you remember what you said to me?
My dad.
Your dad. And I said, and you said you wanted to do really something significant, something impactful, something that would really like be of service to your dad because of how much he's meant to you, right? What did you say that you're committed to doing this year?
Taking him on a trip to Europe next year.
Why is that important to you?
Because he's always been there for me. In my business, he supported me 100%. Always had faith. And I just want to show him that everything he invested in me is going to pay off.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone doubt that AJ is going to do every single thing that he can to hit his goal to make the money that he needs to take his dad on that trip next year? Does anyone doubt that? No. Thank you, AJ. Give him another round of applause. Sometimes we neglect the power and the significance and the impact we can utilize, how relationships can be that thing that gives us power throughout the year. I love that Josh, I actually skipped over this, but I wanted to bring it back up, that Josh said something about his daily routine is checking in about who he cares about, looking into his team. Who needs what right now? For some of you who are coordinators and you're looking at your team and you're considering, who are the people who are the challenging ones? Who are the ones that are going through a tough time? Who are the ones that need a little love? If you woke up and thought about them and you valued the vision over the certainty of just not having to do anything and not dealing with it, if you valued that vision, I would be amazed. You'd be amazed at what your team performs at this year. So this is my wife and kids, and this has just happened over the weekend. Well, not the family. I've had that for a while, but so we met in Vegas. What do you know? Things happen quick. So this is my wife, Monica. It's our son, Anderson, and that's Roan. This is done at 6 o'clock in the morning. Those are the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. And this was a trip that we got to go to see the total solar eclipse in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, on top of a mountain with a frickin' astronaut. It was a legendary trip, right? So we woke up Roan to take this photo, and he clearly does not want to be there right now. So I love my family. They're one of the things that mean the most to me. And we just found out that we're actually expecting our third child. I just found out I'm allowed to tell you that. That's why I needed to tell, I couldn't just tell one at a time. I'm just gonna tell 300 people at the same time, right? There you go, it's all done. So my wife went through, one thing that's been really important in our life is personal development and personal growth. And we invested a couple $100 last weekend for my wife to go through a personal development program. It was about 4 days, and I took on watching our boys for 4 straight days by myself. And that's not normal, right? So it was a very unique and challenging experience. But my wife came back from that weekend, and she was so energized and so enlivened and so just like excited about the future. And she said, John, I was at this event and I fell in love with it, and I want to do their next program. It costs $5,500, and it's going to require me to be away from home for 2 full weeks. Consider the variables. Cost, time, dad watching the kids alone for 2 straight weeks. It's a big ask. It's a big ask. And you know what I said? Of course. Because I learned that lesson early on in my life. Value energy over money and value vision over certainty. Because if we don't do that now, and she doesn't, there's the chances of her doing that program again in the next 2 years after having an infant is pretty slim to none. So if we're going to have an opportunity to do it, this is the only time. And I said, absolutely, sweetheart, let's do it. And sometimes those decisions in our life, like we're given that invitation that we didn't ask for. And it's how we choose to respond that often dictates how the rest of our life and our relationships unfold. And I'm grateful for that decision. I'm excited to see what happens. So I want to wrap up with this. The abundance paradox. Some of those profound things to understand about this concept of abundance, which is, with abundance, what about when you don't feel like it? What about when you don't have a lot of money? I realize that everyone here is in this room in a different scenario. Some of you, your checking account is bouncing back and forth from, $100 to negative 25. Some of you are just coming back in the business after, you left the district manager opportunity. And we're all in different spaces and places and times. So how can you generate abundance when you don't feel like it? Wow, what an interesting thing to learn. You guys want to learn about that? Yeah. All right, here's the answer. Whatever you want, give it away. Whatever you want, find a way to give it away. There are several ways to do this, with our time, with our energy, with our money, with our love. Think about that. How many guys have ever had a moment where you were so ridiculously crazy busy and you're stressed out in your business because you just sent a text out to 2,000 people, you've got all these things to respond to, you got your emails, you got problem orders, and you just look at things and you're like, oh my God, I'm just so busy. Who's felt like this? You want to know the best? And in those moments, sometimes we're feeling abundant, but a lot of times we're not. We're scarcity. We're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough. I can't handle all this, right? One of the best things you can do when you don't have enough time is to have a seat and close your eyes. Can anyone tell you no, you can't do that? You get to dictate that. You could be as stressed as you want to be, and you could leave the booth, go sit on a rock, and close your eyes. Say a prayer, be in silence, have a meditation. I can guarantee when you get up from that and you walk back to the booth, it's going to be a different state. It's like you created time. It's like things aren't as important or as significant. You don't have to get to everything right away because you took the time to just relax when you didn't have time. How weird. You took time when you didn't have time. And suddenly you feel better, you perform better. What an interesting thing. What about with energy? I remember this. It was after the Los Angeles County Fair, and I got a bunch of service calls in Pomona, California, which is it's pretty hot in the summertime, so it's like 100 degrees. And I remember I had 5 service calls for a day, and the middle one canceled. And so I was like just in the middle of the city that I don't live, and it was blazing hot. And I had another service call that I know was gonna be really, really good, but I was also feeling super, super low energy because I slept on a friend's couch, and so I didn't sleep very well. And back then I didn't really eat very well. And I remember just being in my car and the appointment canceled. I almost felt a sense of relief because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can take a nap. Right, any guys felt that? How many guys have taken a nap between appointments, just like parked and be a total creeper in a residential neighborhood, just like some dude sleeping in the corner? It's like, are they homeless? No, they just sell Cutco, right? And I remember literally pulling up and below this tree because it was less hot under the tree. And I pulled my seat back and I was about to take a nap. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I was so excited to fall asleep. And then I thought, I'm like, oh man, sometimes when I wake up from a nap, I'm like low energy. And I'm like, this is a super good appointment right after this. I really, really don't want to blow it. And I remember I actually learned this concept at church that the pastor was talking about how to create abundance is give away what you want. And so I was like, okay, so where am I at? I have no energy. I could go to sleep. I could go for a run. What gives me energy? I was like, when I go for a run, I get energy. I was wearing jeans and my dress shoes, and it was 100 degrees outside. And I was like, let's do it. And I got out of the car, and like a maniac, I ran for 2 miles in my jeans and my dress shoes instead of taking a nap. It was the most absurd thing ever. I'd never done anything like that. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever. But you know how I felt when I got back to my car? Like a freaking champion. Because there's something about that happens internally when we say we're worth it, when we say that we can create this from nothing. So keep that in mind wherever you're at with your energy. What about money? What about when you're struggling? When you don't have all the money that you need to hit your goals or even to pay the bills? Give it away. I'm not saying like cut a big check and just give it to somebody, but it might be like finding $1 and just literally going outside, finding somebody who needs it and giving it to them. Because there's something about that to the universe that says like, I surrender, like I trust you. I believe this is gonna work out. And that's how we can access and transition from just wherever we're at in that scarce state and giving something away. Like it doesn't make sense. And that's why we call the abundance paradox, because it doesn't make sense. You create abundance from nothing. You bring energy when you don't have it. You take a nap or you take a meditation time when you're really busy. Like it doesn't make sense, but it works. Do you guys get it? What about love? This is a story I want to kind of wrap up with. And it was from early in my Cutco career. It was actually my first summer selling Cutco. And there was this woman named Cynthia Brown, and I got referred to her from a friend's mom, and Cynthia was a nice lady. She was a nurse. And I go over to see Cynthia, and she was a sweetheart of a woman, and she was a single mom, and she had 2 boys that she was really proud of. And they had moved out of the house and they were on their own, and she was an empty nester, except for that she had a bird that she was really proud of, a parrot. She had a parrot. It was important anyways. But so she loved her bird, and I just hung out with this lady and we had a great conversation, and she bought like 350 CPO, and it was like a decent order, but I just really enjoyed the time getting to know a customer. You guys ever have that? Just customers, it doesn't matter what they buy, you just really enjoy the time. You're like, can I just live with you? You're an awesome human being. Like, can you adopt me? That's who this woman was. And so I was excited to help her with her order. And then 24 hours later, Cynthia calls me to cancel her order. And this is the first time in my life I'd ever had a canceled order. And you guys know that experience, whether it's your first one or like it happened yesterday. It sucks, right? It's that emotion of just like, part of it is like, oh man, I was counting on that sale. But it's also like this, man, I valued that relationship, that time, that connection. Like, and then it's like this, like, what did I do wrong? Was it something that I said or something that I did? And I was going through all those emotions the whole time while I'm with her on the phone. And I was like, hey, is there something I did? Is something I said? Like, how can I help you? And she's like, you know what? I can't talk about it, but I just need you to cancel my order. Got it. Called Cutco, canceled her order. And I kept thinking about Cynthia for like the next 2 days. I just couldn't get her out of my head. And I was getting kind of like pissed and like upset, and really, I was still like kind of angry about it. And when I thought about it, like why am I upset right now? And when I really thought about it, I was like, I just feel like I lost a friend. I didn't lose a sale. I lost a connection. I lost a relationship. And I can't tell you why I decided to do this, but I wrote her a thank you card. This is when I was 19 years old. This literally might have been the first one I ever wrote. This is the only one I can remember. And I wrote a card that essentially said, Dear Cynthia, I just wanted to reach out to say thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the conversation. I really loved getting to learn about your life, getting to learn about your boys and how proud of them you are. I loved getting to meet your pet parrot, and I really just had a great time. And I totally get that right now is not the time for you to buy Cutco, and that's completely fine. I just want to let you know that I care about you. I think you're an amazing human being, and I wish you the best in the future. I wrote the card, put it in an envelope, dropped it in the mail. Kind of weird in that moment. It was like something changed. It was like that pain, that anger, that feeling that I had, it just kind of like lifted up and went away. And honestly, I kind of forgot about her. I didn't think about her again until 2 years later, when I was in my dorm room. And I remember getting a call from a San Diego phone number, and I was like, oh, pick it up. And then the person on the other line says, is this Cutco John? And I was like, yeah, this is Cutco John. who is this? And she says, you might not remember me, but my name is Cynthia Brown, and I tried to buy some Cutco from you a couple years ago. And I instantly remembered. I was like, oh my gosh, of course, Cynthia, I remember you. Like, how's everything going? She's like, well, things are going a lot better now, and I'm ready to place my Cutco order. Do you still sell Cutco? I said, absolutely. What do you need? And then she had gotten a catalog somehow and started listing out everything she wanted. So I grabbed out an order form, and I'm listing things out and listing things out, and I keep listing things, and I literally had to get a second order form, and I'm just like listing things out, and I'm listing things out. And I'm just blown away because this order is about to be like 4 times the size of what she bought the first time. This is going to be like one of my biggest orders in my career. And I was just totally confused. I'm like, why is this happening? And she says, John, do you know why I'm calling you now? No idea. She said, because what I couldn't tell you all those years ago when I had to cancel my order is that I just found out that I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had to leave my job. And my boys had to move back into the house to take care of me as I went through chemo. And while the last thing I wanted to do was cancel my order, I had to do it. And when I got your letter in the mail, I was so taken aback because I saw that you valued me as a human being more than a customer. And I told myself, when I get healthy, I'm going to buy every damn knife this kid is selling. And that's what she did. Can you plan that? Can you strategize that? Does that fit in the business plan to get random $2,000 orders from people that canceled from you 2 years ago? It's not how abundance works. You decide to be abundant, and then it shows back up. What you appreciate appreciates you back. It's how the world works. It's not always a strategy, it's not always a system, but when you make it a way of life for you, for your business, for how you treat people, for how you take care of your spouse, your family, when you make being abundant a value for you more than you value money, more than you value certainty or security, you get to live an abundant life. Thank you.